I wanted just to check in on appropriateness. If it's for tonight's agenda, or if tonight's agenda is full, it can be where it fits best.
Okay. I haven't seen that. Can anybody, where would we put that? Is that something that we could add to our agenda tonight, or is it heavy already? How does the group feel?
So the only thing I'd share, Nicole, for the group to consider is this is a public meeting, it's being recorded, and I haven't seen the documentation yet, so I won't be able to speak to it.
Okay.
I was in a council
And
meeting.
it's intended as a draft, as a working document for discussion. It's not meant as like where we're at. We're in discussion and planning to submit our requirements on an initial program. So it was meant as a draft, or as the equivalent of a whiteboard of where we're at.
Okay. Jeff, what were you going to say, Jeff?
Sorry, I was just pointing out, I was in a council meeting when it came in this afternoon, so I haven't had a chance to look at it.
Okay. So do we want to hold off then until people have had the chance to look at it? Okay. That okay with you, Duran?
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, just make sure we all get it, maybe.
This entire committee? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is learning the process. Cheers. Yeah.
Sounds good. Anyone else? So if we keep the agenda as is, can I have somebody move the agenda? Thank you, Mayor Mood. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Warden Muse. All those in favor signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Contrary minded, nay. Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Number 3, approval of minutes. I assume everybody has had the chance to look at the minutes from February 12th, 2021. If so, is there somebody who would be willing to move those minutes?
I will, Warden John.
Thank you, Warden John. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Mayor Mood. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Contrary minded, raise your hand. I would say motion carried. I can't see everybody, but I don't have a visual on John. Is that okay, John? You were good with that?
Yes, I am. I'm sorry. I'm in the middle of something. I just got back from a fire. I'm just trying to get cleaned up a little bit.
No problem. Okay. Next, we have presentations. 4.1, order of magnitude breakdown. Mark Brophy, project manager.
Okay. It was included with the agenda. I don't know if it could be put up on the screen.
I can share it here. I have the Excel spreadsheet.
Just one sheet. If you could put that up, it'd be great. And to the top. And there will be, go to the top. Yeah, better go to the top because that number in the bottom won't be looking good. Okay, so a previous meeting that I attended, there was a lot of discussion about East Hants being a very good starting point with some add-ons. So I happen to know the project manager on East Hants quite well. He and I worked on a large project in Newfoundland, so I know him quite well. So I contacted him about the project. So that was a 2018 dollars. It was a $15 million bid by the successful bidder, Bird Construction. All in, it was in the $19 million range. So I said to Roger, I said, if you were to build the identical pool to East Hants in Yarmouth, approximately 4 to 5 years in the difference, what's your gut? Where was it? This guy's very, very strong. He's 35 plus years in the business. He knows cost. What's your gut? And he said, you'd be getting close to $30 million. And that's just the identical standalone building without the add-ons. And the last meeting I attended, add-ons included a bigger pool deck, fitness center, which means different type of change room, locker rooms, a lobby, more multi-purpose rooms for parties and other programs, and an enhanced lobby so people could drop in and go. So without when you start to add those on to what his gut was 30, unfortunately, we're looking at over $30 million. So construction estimates are very tough. There's so many variables. They're often estimated by percentages. A building project takes multiple subcontractors, suppliers. Most are based in Halifax that will, and so what I did was a little exercise comparing East Hants to Yarmouth. So this is what I got on the top. So if you look at the top two columns, East Hants starting at 15, let's assume say the same pool, Yarmouth at 15. Now we start the buildups. So if we talked about a 5-year delay from start to start at about 2% per year, again, that's 10. Now, someone could argue it shouldn't be 2, it could be 1.8 or 2.1, whatever. These are just round numbers, starting point discussion, okay? Location factor is a real tough one to estimate, and it's different from a heavy civil job to a building job to a complex job. But I'm pretty sure if you spoke to anyone in the industry, construction association, Yarmouth is a more expensive place to do work. So we have been using on the ferry terminal a 20% location factor and have been pretty much dead on. So I've inserted 20, some will say it's 25, but out of town trades from Halifax have room and boards, transportation, finding staff. There's a cost associated with that. And there's probably nobody who would go all in to do a job of this size locally. So it's going to take a Halifax builder, a lot of Halifax subcontractors for bonding and capacity and things like that. 20% is not far off. So then we threw some numbers at the additional spaces that were being talked about. And again, any one of these numbers can be challenged, and certainly they can be. So fitness center, walking track, we put a $5 million number there. The lobby is not just an entrance. Lobby is this open space with soft seating, places to enjoy when perhaps you drop your kids at swimming lessons, you go and sit. To try and combine the two entrances, and I think it was said in a previous meeting that the existing rinks, the lobby's not big enough for between periods and things like that, so it has to be enhanced. So we put that number there. Multi-purpose rooms, again, if we're talking one, it wouldn't cost $1 million. If you're talking multiple, it'll be more. You may need a second elevator depending on location. So all of a sudden, we have a construction number getting close to $30 million. Okay. Now the next set at the bottom are real numbers you have to pay. And again, we presented them as percentages. So if you look at the East Hants column, it kind of correlates the numbers that I projected down to $18 million. Okay. But in our case, design can be 8%, 10% in that range. So I put that number there. Project management, you often have a third-party project manager who's day-to-day looking after your interests, can be 2, 3, 4%. Design development, this is a tough one. I typically go higher than that because my background is federal government and they have lots of money in deep pockets. But design development, what that means is the good ideas that come through during the process. So you get a concept design and someone has a great idea. All ideas cost money. That's just the way it is. They cost money. And so through the course, every time you have an idea, the architect adds it, he adds it, he adds it, he adds it, and then bingo, you've got a cost. That's real. I actually think 10% is low, but that's one you can influence by being strict on your scope. Do not allow people to add more. Market conditions, it's something that cost planners always put there. Post-COVID, we don't know if the price is going to come back down or not, but there's a 4 there. Any construction contract will always have change orders, whether it's interpretation problems with the drawings, some poor details, some site conditions. A new build, you'd like to be 5%. A renovation, you're closer to 10. But I'll just throw a 5 there. A building like this often does require good commissioning. Some people pay a premium for a third-party commissioning who is independent from the designer to challenge the design and the performance of all the equipment. I wouldn't recommend it on this one, but it's something that can be there. I've shown nothing. FF&E is abbreviation for furniture, fixtures, and equipment. That's everything from your furniture, your computers, your pool equipment, treadmills, all that kind of stuff. I put a 3% there. There's the totals. It's getting down to over $30 million. That's not a number anyone wants to hear, but you can certainly influence these things. And when you work on percentages, anything in, say, in that additional spaces column that you decrease the associated percentage, and that comes down. Two things that I haven't brought. One is what's called Class ABCD estimates. When people come up with a Class D estimate, they're typically plus or minus 25%, and they're never less. They're always more. But in this case, we went from a fact number with low risk on East Hants as a starting point, so I didn't introduce that one. But anytime an architect gives you a Class D estimate, you might as well add 25%. Now, in that 25%, in fairness, some of the stuff I talked about design development is all part of that. So you don't want to double count. So I didn't show that there. And the other one it's a term called risk tolerance. If you had a top end number, I'll pick a number, $34 million. Cannot go over $34 million. Let's just say. What you sometimes do is put a risk tolerance number, say $1 million. So you design the 33, knowing that you still have $1 million in the reserves in case you have to get to that 34. I didn't present that there. I didn't know what the risk tolerance of the project was. But so the purpose of the exercise is, I think, is twofold. That if you're going to get the East Hants with the add-ons, it's going to be over. I think I've demonstrated it's unlikely going to be over $30 million. And but the part you can influence is the additional spaces. You can make that smaller perhaps, and then everything gets smaller. So again, any line item you can debate that maybe you could take a % off here, % off there. But this is I think this is fair to say industry numbers of what things cost. So open to questions, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody that has any questions for Mark? Gil, go ahead, Gil.
Thank you. Mark, at the outset, you said this was based on a standalone facility similar to West Hants. I'm just wondering, is there any efficiencies in having it attached to the Mariner Center, an existing facility?
I mean, there could be. Yes, there certainly can be. I don't know. I wouldn't be able to show it as a percentage, but with the one thing about a standalone, you're not influencing operations. When you have an existing building, you've got to make sure you keep doors open, phase it, and there's actually a cost dust control associated with that. So it's kind of plus and minus. If you can use the same electrical entrance, same electrical rooms, obviously there's savings in that. But I would think you're going to have to boost a lot of that stuff, and there may not be spaces. So standalone, a lot of times standalone is cheaper than a major renovation, but we're not talking a major renovation. So yeah, I guess there could be savings on saving a fourth wall and things like that.
Okay, thank you.
Like you wouldn't think the mechanical system is going to support the whole new extension. It's going to be all new systems on that, right?
Mayor Mood.
Yep, thank you, Nicole. So Mark, up top, 5-year inflation, I understand that. I understand the location, but what about the building materials? I guess that's the first thing I was looking for.
Well, that's kind of what I had in market conditions.
Gotcha.
And that may be low.
Yeah, because it's, yeah, okay, good. That's my only question.
Were there any other questions? Any other comments?
Yeah, I have one, Nicole.
Okay, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, so Mark, along the lines of materials, so Mariner Center is a tilt-up concrete construction, and is that the most economical or one of the most economical ways to put up a building of this nature, or what comments do you have on that?
HRM, it's very economical because there's all kinds of builders it's right in their backyard. They have it's with a 2-story, yes, tilt is economical.
Okay, thank you.
It's certainly durable. It's a lot of good features on it.
We're 20 years in the Mariner Center and it looks as good as today it
Yeah,
opened.
I
in
mean,
my opinion.
A pre-aged steel can building is really cheap, but it shows us where. Great roof, though.
CEO Brooks, did you have something you wanted to add? Do you have a question? No, you're good. Counselor Dares.
Yeah, just to follow up with what Jeff said, I was approached when I was still at the Mariner Center by somebody from Borchert, who were the original suppliers of the tilt-up, and they were interested in the project. So I believe that there's still an opportunity to obtain similar materials locally.
They do precast as opposed to tilt, don't they? Same idea,
They did
make it in their shop?
the original Mariner Center.
but they did that in their yard and transported it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a little different than tilt, but it's very similar. Precast, that's a precast approach, very similar.
Yeah.
Duran?
Yeah, on Gil's point, one of the things that they're proud about at the East Hants construction is the local vendors and the local suppliers that went down, not just to the walls, but there's a lot of timber in the roof. And I don't know if, Mark, that came up in your conversations with your colleague, but there's a video I have, and I think I circulated with a few folks. There's a lot of timber in the roof and a lot of timber treatments within that they sourced from the local supplier. They also for their wiring and their PA and all that, they also sourced locally too. So I think they made an effort, maybe in their charter, to source locally when they could. You could sense it when you took the tour there.
Is there anybody else who would like to? Oh, yes. CEO Brooks, go ahead.
Thanks. So Mark, we have been approaching this project all along, kind of with a program in mind and working with architects and engineers in creating conceptual drawings. And we've been talking about, construction materials. And I think the original proposal was considering that tilt-up wall style. Tell us a little bit about your experience with projects where, and I know this isn't ideal, but I'd just like to pick your brain a little bit about projects where there's price sensitivity, and you try to do the project backwards. So you try to get pricing with maybe not the concepts, but maybe the program outline and a budget tolerance. How have you seen that work in other projects?
Well, like that's a really good point. I was hoping to have a closing comment on that. So thanks for that. So if you don't start with a realistic starting number, you're asking for failure, because if you're thinking 20, but it's 35, where are you going to cut 15? And then if it's partway through the process, you either got it already designed or you're tendering it. And at the very last, you have to make deep cuts. You're cutting the things that people see and feel. And that's exactly what you don't want to do. You got to start with something that makes sense. And then you don't want to go over it, but you got to have something that makes sense. Don't cut partway through. That just doesn't work. You got to start. Now, granted, I had 18 years of feds. They've got deep pockets, so they can come up with the high-end budgets to start. That's what they do. Okay. But in this case, I think budget is going to be one of the higher drivers. So it's almost like, what can I get for this target number, and work that way. And, yes, a nice PLAM wood structure from BC, look, $1 million. Doesn't come cheap. Basic painted steel can be cheap. So, I think one thing you have to come up with is what your driver is. Is it the product? Is it the time? Or is it the cost? You get 2 out of 3 typically.
Thank you. CAO Muse.
Thank you. Excuse me. So with this information in mind, so we have a pretty decent idea of what order of magnitude is. What would you expect the next steps to be from your perspective around ownership and actually developing a project. So
I think it's actually a very simple answer. I don't believe that if you ask a consultant, do you have your program finalized? He'd say no. You need to finalize what your minimum requirements are and what your program is going to be.
Yep.
There's lots of numbers kicking around to help you decide that, but you need to come up with what he's called a program and let him go. Because right now, I think he's on hold.
yeah, and so what would influence the program, obviously, I would suspect is price. So where you said there were 3 items, obviously, well, I guess from my personal perspective, price would be one of them. So obviously I think one of the steps in order to get that process right, we have to, the 3 municipalities understand what our price point is and where it can't be surpassed. And before we know that, we can't give those instructions to the engineer. I mean, but am I off on that, or?
You're 100% right. If you give him like a number of 25, his first thing is, I can't give you all you've asked for 25. So he can't go forward. So it's two things: a maximum price and a minimum requirement, and then do one more iteration of a concept.
What's difficult with that, though, is we're waiting on funding, right? Like, we don't know what we're going to get for funding, so it's hard to give a price because we don't know what we're going to get. I guess that's what's difficult with all of this. Is there anybody else who would? And I see that Trevor in the chat box has written a comment. By how much would taking the walking track out of the scope reduce the budget?
It's a hard question to answer because even the location of the walking track hasn't been really finalized. If I said $500,000 to $1 million, perhaps but there may be a simpler solution.
Okay.
I'd like to ask a question, and this might be for the CAOs and or Mark. How much was the last iteration of the estimated cost of the last iteration of the project that we had in front of us?
So on this round, we actually hadn't got to a place where there were conceptual drawings that had been priced out yet. And it's to the point about finalizing the program.
But the last drawings that they did roughly had a Class D estimate was what? That included the walking, I think it included the walking track in the old building and a couple other things. Wasn't that around 25?
What was it that was 40? We had something that was 40 million.
The original proposal with the aquatic center and the field house was $46 million.
Yes, I remember that, but we had talked about without a field house. I think it was the first time that we met with EXP and the first time they come back.
I would have to go look.
I remember that meeting. I was a guest at that one. I think you have a very similar number. I also believe the cost consultant is focusing on construction costs and he's not talking the all-in cost. So it may well be $25 million by using a square foot basis to come up
and
with
that's
the
what it
price of
was.
the bid. And it was,
Yeah.
but then all that bottom topics that I have there, design, project management, design development, market conditions, that's not included in any of that, right?
Yeah.
You still have to
That's
design
right.
your building, which is typically towards 10%, okay? You're gonna have construction change orders, any project. So it's 25 plus a lot of those down below.
If I remember correctly, that was the one where Mayor Mood had mentioned something that the walking track was too small because it was a 2-story building and it was on the outside, if I'm not correct. And that's where I think the 25 come from.
Not sure. Don't remember. Is there anybody else who would like to ask a question or has a comment? I can't see everyone, so. Okay.
Victoria, one more thing. The project that you were speaking about, and I think you were talking about Happy Valley Goose Bay. How much was that project? Because that included a pool and a few other things as well. That was very, somewhat similar to the project that we're talking about now.
Yep. So the CAOs and Mark and I did dig into that a little bit, and it was announced and advertised as a $19 million project. There were some of those soft costs at the bottom that were not included in that 19 million. A couple of things to remember is that it was tendered prior to COVID and built mostly prior to COVID. So I think those things had an impact on it, and it is not the concrete tilt-up style. It's a metal ribbed building with metal clad walls and a metal roof. So I don't know about that material being more price sensitive in Happy Valley Goose Bay compared to concrete. I'm not sure. Maybe Mark knows about construction material prices in a remote location like that. But so it was not, it was advertised around 19.5 million, but there were other factors playing into that we just don't have the advantage of right now.
I think I saw a $25 million recent number on that one. It's a very small, compact design for a population of 8,000 or 9,000 people. It is a little different, but it does have a gym.
Okay, Trevor has also written in the chat box, it seems to me that the 3 units need to agree on a budget and work back from there. So that's kind of what CAO Muse had referred to. We really do have to come up with our price point, which we've kind of flip-flopped back and forth. CAO Brooks?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we know a couple of things. We know that the federal provincial amount, we're hearing, a number that's higher than the typical 66%. And we know that the threshold for that is around 20 million on the cost share. So if we max out the federal provincial share of 20 million and we look at what's left, CAO Muse had provided us with kind of an order of magnitude capital cost sharing in a previous meeting. And it looked like the municipalities, based on those numbers, would need to consider something around the $2 million capital mark, not including any local fundraising that we might be able to accomplish. And so the District of Yarmouth actually has a motion on the books, and we've put $2 million in our capital investment plan for this project.
Is there anybody else? CAO Muse?
Yeah, I'm going to, for the benefit of the group, update those numbers because they don't have the benefit of Brophy's work, and they probably should be more, it probably should be a more functional document. So the document I originally did was very, very high level. So if you're talking about a $30 million project, or I guess, what was the number, Mark? It was 35 or something.
Well, the number there I've shown there at 38 is the high end. It's not going to go that high. Okay.
Right.
But it's got to start with a 3. I think I'm pretty confident in saying that.
So under a very inaccurate personal estimate of 35 million, because I trust Mark's work better than I trust my own estimates on that. So let's just say an even 35. And if we're capped out on a federal provincial funding on, let's say, 15 million, which could be real, that leaves a project of $20 million to the community. So if it's that large and we're capped at 15, let's say, that could be what would be considered the worst case. Well, I won't say worst case scenario, but one of the worst case scenarios is that the local community between the 3 of us would have to find $20 million to cover the difference. Now, some of that would be fundraising. And I think, rule of thumb is 10% of the project is doable, though you'd have to consider, the community interest, and et cetera. But let's assume for a moment that's 5. That still leaves 15 million between the 3 of us, and which will require significantly more than the 2 million that Modi graciously put aside, because I think they're the only one so far that put anything aside. But in terms of emotion, that is. So it's a big project, and so we're going to have to go back to our pocketbooks and take a look at figuring out what the maximum is, that's challenging because there's a number of factors that are coming into play. We could get a $20 million grant from the government, and that changes the books entirely. So we'll try to build out a number of scenarios that show perhaps, worst case funding, perhaps ambitious funding, et cetera, and see if that is helpful to this group. As well, internally, we'll have to do that amongst the 3 CAOs.
Okay. CO Brooks.
So I guess I'm just thinking and appreciating what Alain is sharing and trying to understand how we keep the project moving forward. Is this maybe something that we should actually bring to the main committee and by way of recommendation that, in order for us to move forward and take the next steps, we actually need to know, what's our budget tolerance? Because I agree with Mark, there are three elements, around any project. And if price is the number one driver, we have to work to that. And we've talked about a lot of numbers in the last 4 or 5 months, but I really think for this committee to take the next step and settle on a program with architects and engineers and have them do concepts, we really got to know the number. So maybe that's what we have to do next before we go too much further.
Okay.
I absolutely agree with that, and I'm willing to make a motion in that effect that we move for or I'll make a motion that we move to the Mariner Center Expansion Committee, the main committee, that we come up with the final figure that we're comfortable with for the new build.
Sounds good. Do we have a seconder? I can only see 6 of you, so you'll have to say it out loud.
I have a question.
Right. Okay.
Can I ask a question about the motion before it passes?
Yes, absolutely.
The motion needs to be seconded before discussion.
Okay.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, Councilor
But-
Davis seconded.
Okay, my question was before it passed, do we want to, I meant to ask the question before it passed. So in any event, is that the sequence of events? Do you come up with a budget first and then build your plan? Or do you look at what the community is asking for and put down your minimum ask based on what the community is asking for? Because I can throw up a few slides from the survey we did, which drew from the community over 900 responses, and it's pretty clear what the community wants. So it's not, I don't know if I'm opening up for debate, but maybe I am. But do you start with a number and live under that number, or do you start with understanding what the community is asking for and understand what that costs, and then bring it, make some decisions from that?
You
So-
can propose an answer if you want me to.
And I have one too.
Okay, go ahead.
Who's first?
Okay, so I'll start by saying, Duran, we did do that. The original $46 million pitch was derived from what we heard from the community. And what we heard from government was it was too big of a project. And then there were also some partners around the table who, that number was a little bit unsettling for them as well. So I think you're right. The community needs are important. And we did begin this process by starting there, but we're learning very quickly that the price sensitivity, it has to be respected, and we have to try to find a way to answer the community needs within the price sensitivity. That's my understanding of where we're at.
Mark, did you want to speak on that?
Sure. So if the question is on process, there's no rules on that. But the process for this committee, there may be a strict rule on that one. So in general, when you approach an architect for concept, you do give them a budget that you're willing to pay, and you sort of give them minimum program requirements. So I think the program requirements are changing a bit. The budget appears to be changing a bit. You can do both in parallel, and again, you don't have to have one or the other. You can do it, but if you have a approximate budget and then you scale back, you have your minimum requirements and you scale back the optionals to get back to where you need to be. So if your 6-lane 25 meter is your mandatory, can't be changed, fine. maybe your pool deck space can be made smaller to get to the budget. Maybe instead of a 6,000 square foot fitness center, you're into 4,000 square foot fitness center. So your nice to haves get scaled back to get back to within the budget you're prepared to pay. But it makes no sense to say, we want everything for $25 million. You can't win on that one. You're just going to go back to the drawing board and go back around and circle again.
Thank you. Mayor Mood, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I'm just on the fence on this one because I understand cost sensitivity. I don't know if it's I don't know if it's fear of raising taxes or if it's we really can't afford it, but I'm also not a believer in building half of a facility. So, you know, when we've talked about this before, so the fitness piece, for example, that brings in the revenue, you know, it depends what you cut back, I guess. When you start cutting those pieces back, then you're right back to the drawing table because you may as well have thrown more money on the table to get what we need to bring in the revenues, because we're going to be dishing them out anyway in the end if we don't have enough space to draw that in. So I guess I'm just not a fan of building half, and certainly not that we will get here, but I mean, if we cut back and the pool ends up being $25 million, are we just building a pool? Like that's the scary stuff. We already have a pool, not a good one, but you know, so we need to be careful.
Thank you. Duram, did you want to add something? You're muted.
And I don't have notes prepared, but I have a reaction here that I need to include, I think, to be at peace with myself. So the documents that, you know, this is 2017. And so there has been environmental changes, you know, to the region, right? We're experiencing an influx of migration to the province. Atlantic Canada and other rural areas are becoming a destination through and post-COVID. And I think that as people consider what our budget, what we reacted to for costs back then, the circumstances have changed. And I would like to make the argument that as you consider your budget now, think about the opportunity we have to create a beacon for migration. These are the things, these are the assets that people, professionals consider when they're sizing up their checklist for a move. And so when we get, if we do this right, it's going to pay it forward so much. So I appreciate numbers myself. I'm surrounded by them all day, but I just hope it's not, we're not reacting to an environment that actually has changed since the last price tag got floated.
Thank you. Councillor Dares?
Yeah, I think one of the things I'd like to comment on as well is I sat in the same room when I heard that the federal provincial contribution was only going to be within the range of 15 to 20 million. I'm not sure I'd be prepared to accept that at face value. I think that we have to show a case for building a facility that this community needs and this region needs. And I think that we can do that. And I don't think we should just sit back and say, okay, we're going to accept, your first offer of 20 million or 15 million, whatever it was. I really don't think that we should be stopping at that point.
Thank you. Anybody else want to add anything? Nobody else? We have a motion on the floor. Oh, sorry, CEO Brooks.
So I'm not sure if John wants to comment on what Councillor Dares just shared, but I'll start, and if Warden Cunningham wants to jump in, he can. So the District of Yarmouth asked that exact question when we met with senior bureaucrats just a month or so ago. Given COVID and giving what we think we're hearing about an appetite for rebuilding communities, particularly investing in recreation infrastructure, which has been proven to be so important during the pandemic. And I saw heads nodding when Councillor Dares was sharing what he was sharing. I'm concerned that we're going to pitch another project and it's not going to be received well because we did not listen to advice we were given. And the District of Yarmouth was given very clear advice that 20 million is the ceiling. And we asked that exact question, you know, if we could make a case, if we could pitch. And, you know, I don't know if the warden wants to add to my comment or even disagree with me, but we heard loud and clear that that 20 million was a fairly firm, hard number. Now, I'm not sure, you know, what anybody else heard. And, you know, we want to position the project for success because without the federal provincial partnership, I don't know that we can do it alone. So I'd be interested to hear from the rest of the group, not disagreeing with what Councillor Dares is saying, the philosophy behind it, but I just have a concern around positioning the project successfully.
Mayor Cunningham, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
I only heard part of what Victoria had said. I'm having trouble with internet connection. My internet's off of the cell towers, and this time of day it gets wonky. But anyway, I think I heard the CAO mention something about $20 million was the hard number. And that's exactly what we heard, because we did ask the minister, or the deputy minister, what was the top end. And I think we should be shooting for that. And that was one of the main reasons why the municipality district of Yarmouth decided that we by ourselves, that we were going to put 2 million for the capital investment plan. That was what we figured what we could get, and also fundraising, and also by hiring a firm to do some fundraising in the community, whether it was a national chain or something like that, because we pretty well realize the numbers that Mark put there on the ground is not too far off. I might dispute him a little bit. However, I'm not an engineer, but the top end number that I see is that just in informal conversations with our councils was roughly around the $30 million mark, because that's what we figured what we were going to be able to get. And also it also suited the needs of what we heard during the past election, and also in the work that Durham and the Mariner Center did, and it's coming loud and clear. So the municipality district of Yarmouth at least stepped up on that front. And I think with this motion on the floor, we've got to make a statement to the province, say, look, we're in. This is what we need, and see where the chips fall.
Thank you. Anyone else before we vote on the motion? All right, can we, yes, CEO Hushu.
So I just want to understand what the intent of the motion is. Is the intent of the motion to ask the steering committee to ask the councils individually what their tolerance is? Or is the intent of the motion to ask the steering committee to come up with a project number and ask the councils to agree to it? Or whether, are we going to recommend something, or is this going to be 3 separate decisions without a recommendation?
That's a good question. What was your intent, Warden Cunningham?
My intent was to bring that to the main committee so we can hash it out there and make the recommendation with all 3 wardens and deputy wardens and the other council members of the thing, to bring that forward to council. Say, this is the number we want. Are you good with it? That's the intent of the motion.
Okay.
So would you make a recommendation to that group? Or you just want to have the full discussion there?
I'm
So-
sorry, I didn't hear that.
He said, would you make the recommendation to the group?
Oh, I would, absolutely.
Are there any other questions? CAO Muse, did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, just on the 20 million, well, there's 2 points as quickly as I can be. The Councillor Dares's concept of pushing the envelope. Look, our deputy ministers told us what the maximums might be. There may be some political intervention that would increase that number, but I think it's fair to say that it's not going to increase by a lot. So I think it's fair to land on that is to say that, you know, whatever their tolerance is not going to be considerably larger than what the deputy minister indicated, I suspect. But I think it's worth in looking into that for sure, because, well, for obvious reasons. On the point of making a recommendation on the size, I think that I don't want to create a situation where we're coming up with a recommendation and that the recommendation hasn't been vetted in some way in terms of affordability on an individual fronts. So I'm trying to understand what this looks like and how best to navigate this. You know, it is the job of this committee and of course the main committee to bring recommendations to these councils. But I think I was envisioning that there needs to be a work, and the 3 CAOs probably have to do that work in order to assist this committee in making a recommendation, or the main committee, for whichever committee ends up making it. You know, I'm concerned that we're just going to pick a number and that's the number without actually going into it in a little bit more detail. I guess I like the idea. I'm just not clear on the details.
So are you saying, CAO Muse, that you feel that it would be best if the 3 CAOs sat together first and kind of hash this out and figured out a number?
It's difficult for a committee without having access to any sort of like financial capacity information to make a recommendation. I feel like the recommendation would have a certain blindness associated with it. And I mean that in the nicest way. I'm trying to envision what this committee would require in terms of information in order to inform you on what the maximum is, because the maximum, it may be based on different tolerance levels of 3 different units, right? So, you know, we haven't spoken about, you know, how the allocation of that municipal proportion will look like. Though we've had some conversation, we still haven't landed officially on that. So I feel like that work needs to inform this committee before, but I'm open to that discussion. I'm not sure exactly how to press on there.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Mood?
Yeah, I agree 1000% with Alain there. We don't want to sit at a committee where we're not informed on the numbers. And I guess in my head, because Jeff always does this for us, you know, when you say $2 million or $5 million or $7 million, it sounds like a big number until you spread it out over whatever, 20 or 25 years. And you say, this is what you're committing to over 25 years, which is less of a sticker shock. And to me, more easily accepted. So I don't think I'd want to sit at that committee without those types of things in front of us, because it's tremendously helpful to put everything into perspective. And you know what? We're not sitting on that committee as experts in funding and numbers by any stretch. That's what the CAOs do.
Thank you.
So
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I'd be afraid too that somebody would pull a number out and say, you know, we're not crossing $27 million. We're just not doing it. And then it's like, but for another $5 million, we just need to be very careful and unafraid.
Councillor Dares?
Yeah, just further to my comments earlier regarding the provincial and federal contribution. You may recall that several years ago, we sat at a table with 3 councils and the MP and the MLA when they both indicated support for a 66% funding arrangement. So 33, 33, 33. I'm not convinced yet that we can't get back to that. Deputy ministers, with all due respect, deputy ministers change.
Thank you. CAO Brooks? You're muted, CAO Brooks.
to Ellen's point, I do just kind of want to loop back. So the order of magnitude work that Mark presented to us this evening, and I know Jeff has to sign off in like 3 minutes. That came about from, to Mayor Mood's point, it did come about through information and more or less preferences that were expressed by this committee as well as the main committee. So we took the East Hants build and we added a couple of programming pieces that we knew our community was looking for around the walking track and the fitness center. And we built out this order of magnitude. So this is an informed order of magnitude exercise. And I think what I'm hearing Alain say is if we look at that 38,304,000 and we go back to the financial work he presented to the group around what would that look like if we share it out amongst the investors. I think if we go back to that and we put something with it, we might be able to come back to this group and maybe paint a more fulsome picture to take on to the main group. I guess what I feel like I need to say to this group is we are going around Robin Hood's barn every time we come together as a committee. And the chicken and the egg argument can be had all day long. But at some point, to Mark Brophy's point earlier, you've got to pick a driver and you've got to start working that driver to take your project forward. And I think that's all. I think I'll stop there.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Saram.
So just to clarify what Victoria said, it sounds like that the huddling of the CAOs is still a suggestion, but then to come back to this subcommittee and maybe the motion is paused for now until this subcommittee has the broader view, connecting the dots with everyone who's just spoken. And then this subcommittee can do their mandate to make a recommendation back at that point. Is that what I'm hearing? Just to paraphrase back? I have to do that for myself.
That is the recommendation. We do have to vote on the motion though, right? Am I correct? We will vote on the current motion.
We could have a motion to table it, Madam Chair.
Okay.
And bring it back. We could table it to the next meeting.
Okay. CAO Muse?
I've already spoken once on this one, or at least once, so this will be the last time I speak on this motion. Is the motion can stand as is. My concern is that there's work that needs to be done prior to that being brought to the main. So the motion is not my concern. It's what the CAOs ought to do in preparation for the next meeting that is my concern. Or somebody, it may be Mr. Brophy, it may be others, but that's my only concern that I'm raising is that it needs to go to that committee, but prior to that, the work needs to be done so the committee can be informed by that work. I don't think we want to necessarily delay. It's just I feel like there's a step there that we keep talking about that's missing, which is the 3 units sitting down and figuring out financially what our tolerance points are and where our pain points are and how are we going to get past them, how are we going to resolve them and move forward, right? So that's because we're 3 different people investing in a project here, and I just that discussion needs to happen sooner rather than later.
Okay. Mayor Mood, did you have something you want to add?
Yeah, so I was just going to ask, so do we pass this motion and then make another motion right after that says that work needs to be done too? I mean, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. We don't even know what our percentages are.
Right.
So, I mean, we have to have those conversations before we can commit as a council to what the number is. So Alain, is that sensible that we would pass this one and then just say, let's get the work done?
Yeah, it's just, yeah, I think that it's reasonable to instruct the 3 CAOs, seeing as this body is represented by 3 of our councils. So yeah, I would say that you could absolutely do that, is to say that the 3 CAOs in anticipation of that decision do the work or do what they think the work is required.
Gordon Muse?
I agree. We could amend the motion to add that in there and have it one motion rather than have two motions. You know, if that's what we're looking at, that the motion can stand with the addition of that the CAOs have to do work before it goes to the main. But that would have to be with the mover and seconder if they agree with amending that.
How do the mover and seconder feel about that?
Absolutely.
Okay. And who was the seconder? I can't even remember anymore.
Gil was the seconder.
Gil, how do you feel? Are you okay with that amendment? Okay. So we have a motion on the floor. Poor Jeff, I know we're trying, because I know you have to leave. We have a motion on the floor. Any other questions? Any other comments? Okay, so all those in favor of the motion signify by raising your hand or saying aye. Contrary minded, raise your hand or say aye. Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Thank you for the discussion. Excellent. Okay, next on the agenda, new business, fundraising consultant recommendation from the main committee. That is Jeff, who's probably going to leave in 30 seconds.
30 seconds, but I'll make a quick stab at this and then I do have to go. I'm sorry. So I've talked to a couple of fundraising consultants, and Victoria was with me for one of the conversations I've had over the last few years about fundraising. I guess the last discussion that we had, I guess the main committee, was that we should get going with the fundraising as soon as possible. And there are really two reasons for that. One is that if we shoot for a benchmark like 10% of the project budget, whatever that is, and you engage a consultant to do a feasibility study on that, you'll find out a few things from the feasibility study. First of all, the process that in doing the feasibility study is to, at least my understanding of it, again, told by a consultant, I don't know this personally, I'm just relaying information, is that they would reach out to people, a list of people that we would give, people who would be likely philanthropic donors to the project. And they would go and they would interview them, see what they know about the project, see if they would support the project. And if they think this project would be worthy of support, well, maybe they would come up with a range that person might be willing to contribute. They might ask that person if they're willing to sit on a board to see the philanthropic campaign carried out. And they might ask them if there are other people that they know of who are like-minded, who know of the project, support the project, and would contribute to the project. And so the consultant, through a series of interviews, gets a sense of what is the buy-in from large donors in this region for this project. They would come back to you and say, it looks very likely you'll be able to meet your project goal. It looks very likely that you could actually get these donations based on the interviews that we had from these people. And this list of people are actually willing to chair and lead the philanthropic campaign. So you would come out of that feasibility study with a lot of information, some pledges in the ready, and ready to launch your effort. The benefits of that, of course, is you've confirmed the community interest in the project, so that you know that we're going down the right path, and that you've got the support of the community behind you. But secondly, when you go to the provincial and federal government looking for that enhanced contribution we're talking about, you've got the community behind you and you've got numbers to support that. So those are reasons why this work should start fairly soon, because confirming the project is the right project and being able to go to the largest funders, the federal and provincial government, with leverage from the community, I think are both very valuable. So the steering committee wanted you folks to talk about this, and I would say the logical step to take would be to develop a terms of reference, an RFP for a philanthropic consultant, and to issue that and see what you receive back from the industry in terms of interest. And then you'd be in a position to decide to move forward or not, and maybe have your capital budget nailed down by then.
Councillor Dares.
Yeah, I just want a quick comment. there may be a resource in the community that I met through the Connector program that has both national and international experience that may be able to provide some guidance, and reluctant to provide a name at this point because we'd have to contact that person, but I think it might be a first step.
Any other comments? So what is the wish of, oh, sounds good, looks good. What is the wish of the group? Do we want to make a motion to develop an RFP for a philanthropic consultant? Somebody willing to make that motion?
I do.
Okay, Warden Cunningham, seconded by Mayor Mood. Any other questions or comments? All those, Yep, sorry,
Before
go
we
ahead.
go ahead, is this going to be directed to the CAOs to hammer this out and bring it forward to the committee the next time we meet? Just making,
It
Yes.
looks that way.
Okay,
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Just double checking. That's all I had.
somebody else. Oh, CAO Muse, go ahead.
Well, that's the work of one of the three, so we can decide which one. Because the work that does not require all three to be engaged. It would take longer. We'll get one person engaged. We can figure that out amongst the three of us.
Yeah, and I'm fairly confident, Madam Chair, that there's a template or an example out there. We won't reinvent the wheel.
Okay, sounds good. Any other comments or questions?
Question on the motion.
Okay, questions been called. All those in favor signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Contrary
Aye.
minded, raise your hand. Motion carried. Thank you. Political update 5.2. That is Jeff and Victoria.
Okay, can I speak quickly on it and then be
Yeah.
gone?
Sure.
Okay, I had a conversation in the community very recently with somebody who is much, I mean, I'm not a politician, but somebody who has a lot of political experience and connection. And there was some speculation that there might be a snap election coming. There might be some opportunity ahead of a snap election to have a project funded, and that there's some urgency. And I hate to say it that way, but maybe an opportunity. Let's put it that way. There might be an opportunity, and we don't know what the timeline is. And so the comment here was, obviously we want to get ready as soon as we can and get on that list that the deputy minister spoke about, and he spoke to all of us about that. Be ready, be on the list, and make our political contacts. And I'm speaking to politicians here about something you guys live and I just advise on. But we have elected representatives in Argyle and in Yarmouth provincially, and we have an elected representative federally, and we have a former elected representative federally from the government side. These are all important people to talk to and make sure they are up to speed on where we are on the project. And I think there needs to be a plan or a body of work that our political leaders are following through with regular updates to these people, so that if something does start to shake loose, we're the first to know and we can respond to it. And that if our political representatives are asked about the project, they have an up-to-date story to tell. And yeah, that's a concern.
Good, very good point. Thank you. CAO Brooks, did you want to add anything to that?
So I think we had talked about very early on when the three councils came back to this project and kind of developed how you thought you wanted to approach the work. We talked about communication, and we talked specifically about the external communication piece, but also working with the partners. And so I realize this is the new build subcommittee, but the project is bigger than that. It is about the expansion to the Mariner Center. So my recommendation would be that this group go back out to the main committee and mobilize what I would think would be the two wardens and the mayor to develop a plan of people that they want to network with and have conversations with to make sure that they're up to speed on the project, create the open lines of communication so that if there's information, like Jeff said, at higher government levels moving, that we get the call, like we did on the federal survey here a couple weeks ago. So, that would be my recommendation. I think this subcommittee is more about the program and the conceptual drawings. I think the main committee is our networking and our advocacy committee.
Thank you. Any other comments? Questions? No? So what is the wish of this group? Where do we move forward with this?
So I think, Madam Chair, it's a recommendation to the main committee that the mayor and 2 wardens meet with senior government officials to keep them debriefed on the project as it unfolds.
Okay. Do we have consensus? Do we have to make a motion on that, or is it just, yes, we should? Okay. Is there somebody willing to make that motion?
I so
Here.
move.
Warden Cunningham and seconded by Mayor Mood. Are there any other questions or comments on that? Okay, all those in favor signify by raising your hand or saying aye. Contrary minded, nay. Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Old business, 6.1, program review and workshop with EXP.
So, Madam Chair, given how the conversation has gone this evening, I recommend we table that agenda item until we address some of the important topics that we made some motions on tonight, and we bring it back when we've settled some of those issues.
Okay, that sounds
And I
good.
will let the consulting engineers know. It's going to be a while yet. They've been really great to work with, really patient, and they understand how complex this project is. But I will make sure I let them know.
Okay. So do we make a motion to table that? Is that how we do it, CEO? Or do we-
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah,
so.
I'm not sure if it will be to the next meeting, Madam Chair, or if it will be a future meeting. It just depends on how long it takes us to get the other homework done.
Okay, sounds good. So can I have a motion to table 6.1 for now?
I'll move to table at a future meeting. We can't say next meeting because we don't know.
Right, for sure. Thank you. Can I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Dares. All those, is there any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor signify by raising your hand or saying aye. Contrary minded, motion carried. Excellent. Next meeting, when are we? So really, we kind of have to wait until we get some information back from our CAOs. Do we set a tentative date, or would we be better off to wait? Councillor Dares?
I would suggest that would be at the call of the chair.
Okay.
So the only thing I'm finding, Madam Chair, is that everybody's really working hard and everybody's calendars are filling up quickly. Could we pencil in a date? A month from now, let's say, and if we need to meet sooner, we will. I mean, a month is a long time, but there were a lot of moving parts here tonight.
Right. So why don't we set then a date where the 23rd?
Tuesday night on the 4th week of the month might be difficult for the town of Yarmouth. I'm not sure because we squeezed this meeting in.
Okay. On April 20th, it's a Tuesday. Is 3:30 a possible time?
That worked for me, I
That
think.
work?
That's a possible day and time for exact time for a REMO executive meeting, Madam Chair. So I'm not sure where that's going to land.
Okay.
See what I mean?
Yes, I do.
Yeah,
What
we
about-
switched that.
What about the 21st, which is a Wednesday, 3:30? Is that possible?
That-
That
I-
works?
I don't have the schedule that the elected officials or the CAOs have, but I just want to harken back to Jeff's commentary on this potential snap election. His point was to consider timing. So we're now past a month for another follow-up. So just for the group's consideration, with all due respect.
Okay, no, it's fine. Are we able to, do we think we're able to meet before that? Will the CAOs be able to get the information together that we need before a month?
Well, I think the issue, Madam Chair, is to do that financial work and take it out to the main committee. So I think that's the meeting we should be pressing for, is the main committee meeting, to see if we can get those budget figures solidified. I think that's the one. And, I agree with Duran, but I think that's the one we need to be pressuring for.
I understand that. Okay.
Yeah.
I misread that. I get it now. Thanks.
Yeah, it would be the main committee where we finally hammer out those details, and then this committee here would have the numbers that they can work with, and then
Got it.
be able to move forward with that.
CAO Muse? You're muted.
Wow, that's the second time in a year I've done that. That's great. Wonderful. You all loved it. So the okay, Jeff is still here. This is kind of on scheduling, and I don't know where to raise this. So we've recently made a decision where the three councils have ratified the Mariner Center would be the main, I guess, the main organization to organize the Main Street reopening. Okay, the bridge. Okay. Initially, when we set this up, we had the original steering committee, which is the one we keep making recommendations to. And we had two sets of subcommittees because we had two sets of work. One of those sets of work we just assigned to the Mariner Center board. So my question is, should we continue to exist as a committee here, or in the interests of expediting the project and the decisions, should we not merge this into the main and have the main committee do the work? Because all we're doing now, because like it had a purpose,
Yep.
but now I'm not sure the purpose exists. And so as soon as the purpose ceases to exist, we should be merging the committees to reduce the layers of decision making. I offer that as advice to you. It is your decision.
I'll take
And
your
I'm-
advice.
Yeah, and if there's something that the main committee needs one of the ad hoc subcommittees to break off and look after and come back, we can always do that.
Because there's a ton of committees, right? And it's slowing down. It's slowing down the
Yeah.
process.
It's-
So
I
go ahead, John.
I absolutely agree with that, because one of the big problems that people see out there in the public anyway is the red tape.
Yeah.
And actually, that was something I was trying to figure out how the heck we're going to bring up. But if the main committee had something that they want specifically that the new build subcommittee to work on, then absolutely we could meet. But I do agree, and I don't think it would interfere with the terms of reference that all three councils had already agreed to. So I think that would work quite well, personally. And if someone needs to make a motion of that, I'll certainly make that a motion that this committee be merged back into the Mariner Center Expansion Committee, the main committee, until such time that we need to call another meeting, because all the main decisions right now need to be made up there.
Do we have a seconder on that motion?
I can make a motion that we do that. Now, I guess
That was
maybe I'll wait for, we can't make a motion about the bridge committee. We can only say, this one will merge, it'll be up to the bridge committee if they want to do the same thing. But I'll make that motion.
You're going to second that motion? John just
Well,
made that motion.
Yeah,
Can I make a comment here?
Yeah,
I
go
feel
ahead.
like it's backwards. I could be right. Maybe I'm tired. But we are a subcommittee of the main committee. So the main committee would just probably say you don't have to exist anymore. Maybe I'm backwards, but
Good
you know.
point.
Yeah, I read it as a recommendation, Pam. I agree.
Gotcha. Okay, if it's a recommendation, I'm good.
yeah, that's what I originally said. I thought, but I'm getting kind of tired today too. I was out chasing grass fires, so that was my original intent. If I didn't say recommendation, but that would be the full extent of what I was thinking of.
Okay. So Warden Muse, you're good with
Yes.
seconding that?
Yes.
Okay. So any other comments on that?
Just for clarity to those that are watching, I know that, we all feel the same way about the layers of decision making and how they work. But I just would like to reiterate, there was a purpose for it. And the purpose was to separate the work so that we wouldn't lose one piece of work to the other. That purpose being fulfilled, I think it's appropriate to do what you've done now. But, I can understand somebody not seeing it from its beginning, feeling that there was a lot of committees. We all agree it was a lot of committees because we're in them, right? But I think this was, anyway, I appreciate you moving quickly on that advice. Thank you.
Okay, so any other comments? Okay, so all those in favor signify by raising your hand or saying aye. Contrary minded, nay, or raise your hand. Okay, that motion's carried. So we're still looking for, so do we look for a date or do we wait for the main committee date? Now I'm confused. Maybe it's because I'm tired.
Yeah, I think now Vicky Pierce and Warden Cunningham work to get a main committee
Okay.
meeting together
That's
That's good.
ASAP. Yep.
Excellent. Okay.
I think we're all in the same boat at least.
There's a date for the main committee on the 30th here.
Is there?
Yes.
Okay.
It
Tentative.
might come earlier.
Well, don't forget the CAOs have work to do.
That's
Okay.
true, but
But we'll hear from Vicky what the date for that. Okay, sounds good. Anything else? That's everything on the heavy agenda. Thank you, everybody, for the discussion, for participating. And can we have somebody move, we adjourn?
I'll move that.
All right, thank you. Do we have a seconder? Warden Muse, you're seconding that? Okay, thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Bye.
Night.
All right. thank you,
Awesome.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Great job, Nicole. Thanks.
Merci,
Yeah.
Nick.
Night,
Merci,
everyone.
Nico.
Yeah, well done.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Where's my leave button? There it is.